Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. We're going to discuss everything to do with the market, which is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some money and capitalize on some good news today. Loaded up for discussion today. We've got the US and China deal they've released a positive joint statement. Both parties are going to commit to keeping 10% tariffs, but suspend some of them for an initial period of 90 days. Legendary is going to give us the breakdown for that a little bit later in the show. We're going to talk Bitcoin dominance crashing down from 64% to 61% in just a few days. And memes are going absolutely crazy. A lot of altcoins moving aggressively still. We'll be talking about that. And then finally, BlackRock met with the SEC to discuss staking crypto ETFs. Just want to get you up to speed with that, as we will do with all the other bits of news you need to know over the weekend as well. I've got Legendary in the co-host seat with me today, ready to get into it. But just a reminder, friends, nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is very, very risky, and we don't know anything for sure. So please proceed with caution, exercise your own judgment, and do your own research. With that out of the way, Legendary, it is Monday. It's the 12th of May. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Jim, I'm doing absolutely fantastic. It's a beautiful way to start the week by looking at the charts. I am still traveling. I'm still in Spain, but the amount of FOMO has become unbearable. So I'm very excited to be back at my own desk in a few days.
That will be good. It is very helpful to be back at your own desk. I mean, I feel like it's a period of time now. Kind of had multiple confirmations, right? And the market's moved so aggressively that's just like remember last year where we basically put a ban. Well, I think you still ended up traveling a lot, but we kind of put a ban on ourselves to be like, look, I need to stop traveling, need to lock in. There's no need to go anywhere. Just need to get the work done. And the market was moving so much that I think it was like unnecessary to go anywhere. I feel like it's kind of that period of time again where things have heated up so much that you really just gotta pay attention now. So I definitely sympathize with that. Have you been tempted back into the market over the weekend whilst you're supposed to be holidaying, or have you been taking some time away?
I've been trading pretty actively, except for one day where I actually decided to lock my phone away and just spend an entire day phone and laptopless and just be focused on reading a book, which was very lovely. But apart from that, I've been trading throughout the holiday in a more active fashion.
Okay. Um, and why did you decide to do that? What was the impulse, and what are you looking at?
The trading or the locking the phone away? I assume the trading.
Yes.
Well, I had this post out. I think it was on the weekend where I said like everything is running. There is so much happening across the different niches and ecosystems. You have abstract being very much alive. You have AI, especially virtuals, running it back with the point system on the new launches, but also the old launches running to an insane amount. Like Vader is basically back. Trust is up 800-ish%, which was also one of the more popular AI agents there. The point system is very attractive for new launches. That is on the AI side. You have the DeFi sector running again. Sonic is very active. You have more stuff than ever to do on Hyperliquid as well, from farming stables to protocols to unit to NFTs to exploring stuff on Hyper EVM. You have still beautiful ways to farm yield on Polkadot. As I said, now we have runners being back on abstract. Solana, there's also stuff to do there as well. So basically, this is the time to pick two things, maybe three if you can handle that, and focus on them and trade them.
Indeed. I agree with everything that you just said. As you also said though, like I don't think it's ever been more overwhelming to try to participate in
Mm.
this market because there just weren't this many chains before. And the reality is, yes, it is different on each chain. And although some of the trends and behaviors and trajectories are the same, to try to know which is the top dog, literally, if it's some meme coin on on AVAX versus abstract versus bearer chain, like it's very taxing to know. Okay, well, Dith's cat launched on Abstract and that went to 1 million, and you could have got in at 100 versus some coin that's launched on Avalanche to do with the arena ecosystem, and that's gone to 10 mil
ID
versus
15 even, yeah.
exactly. So it's like it's very difficult when all these things are going at the same time, and I don't think that happened even in 20. Okay, say just take even half a step back, which is just to the meme coin cycle that we just went through. It was like, okay, everyone's focused on Sol. People have got these trading bots, and you can like kind of focus there. Now the aperture is like slightly widened, and you've got these alternative options. I actually put out a tweet this morning to say that you still need that Sol wallet though. Like, even if you've got these other things, it's still the main arena. You've just got some other arenas to play in as well. So I think the only thing I'd add to your point is yes, you can you can be ready to trade these things, identify them, maybe pick a few, and then maybe even team up with people. This is the thing. Like if you've been around in the space for a little bit of time now, you might be able to team up with people and say, look, you take these two these two sectors. I'm going to take these two. We'll discuss it, but we're just not going to have time to to kind of execute these things individually all the time when you're trying to cover more. So that'd be my one question mark if people were thinking of how to attack this stuff in maybe even a bigger way. Any final reflections? We're going to talk more strategies, more headlines as well in just a little bit as usual. But any final reflections before we get into it?
Yeah, one final reflection is that with all the things we just mentioned now, we did not even touch on just trading the majors. Like,
Yeah,
D-Pharma had this amazing post out saying that he basically, quote unquote, made it all back in one trade, which does not mean that he lost everything. He's a very, very respectable trader, went into explaining that basically what his thesis on ETH and BTC was. He pretty much timed the bottom on ETC, I think, at 1400-ish is where he posted that he bought in massively. And he also said like one of his rules is to not, in the most extreme case, he has 10% of his entire portfolio in a single bet. And I think this was the case with this one, the way he made it sound. And he is up an absurd amount of money on that as well. So even with all like those quote unquote micro opportunities that we've explored, you still can trade the majors as well. And you still can do that in a pretty impressive way. So as you said, completely understand everyone who says that they are overwhelmed in this market, because last time around, all you had to do, and I remember we spoke years ago, we said, oh my God, there's so much to do. There's one NFT mint a day or two a day. And that was like very much manageable. Like you stayed up from a European perspective until 3 a.m., minted whatever was going on Nifty Gateway, minted the PFP collection, but that's it. You were done for the day. It took you basically a couple minutes of button clicking, gas wars, and maybe having a bot running to be able to mint fast. But that was it. Like you could still have a life and spend the rest of the day away from the computer. But now there's 20, 30 times the amount of things to do. Even if you just focus on two ecosystems, there's so many more things happening in there or within them than just a mint a day. So yeah, quite excited to also be discussing that a bit more. Not only on this show, I think now that the market is back, we'll definitely spend more time on talking about our portfolio trading strategies, the things we like and focus on.
Yeah, 100%. I was going to say, what was I going to say? I had a point to make about the opportunities in general. Yeah, you said the majors, something like Hype from its lows is up 2.5x. Like it's up more. You can, that's like a quick W money on something which is fairly straightforward move, right? So yeah, look, we're going to discuss all of that in a bit more detail in just a little bit. Definitely feels like the energy is back and we are excited for it. So as usual, let's get into the market stuff to get you up to speed with everything you need to know from the past 48 hours or so, starting with the price action on the majors. As usual, we have Bitcoin is actually just flat at around 104A. Damn, feels like it's been a few days. Don't know if I've said such a high number in a while. 104K for Bitcoin. ETH is up almost a couple of percent to 2.5K. XRP is up a couple of percent to 244. BNB is up 3% to $682. Solana is up a percent to 176. Just to give you some context, ETH is up 40% on the last 7 days. Bitcoin's up 10. Sol is up 20. So obviously ETH doing a little bit of catching up here. It was incredibly underperforming for a long period of time. Getting into the meme coin side of things, we had all kinds of runners here. I don't really know. I don't know if you need me to read every single one of these, but basically everything is going crazy. Got Doge up 5%, Pepe's up 15%, Trump is up a few percent, Bonk is up 10, Fartcoin's up 5, Whiff is up 40, back to $1.20. Got Pengu up 4%, SPX is up 10, Popcat's up 16, Peanuts up 24, Mudeng is up 112% in the last 24 hours and 560% in the week. Like this stuff is it's really moving. It's going pretty crazy. Goat is up 56%. So if there's any doubt, I feel, I don't know, I don't feel too sick for missing some of these moves because it's just unrealistic to have bought these where people bought them. In my opinion, I would not have predicted some of these like animal memes that people liked before to move back in the same way. Like there was no scenario where I might have predicted that. But even the AI stuff, the fact that that's running back, Legendary mentioned that at the top of the show. Virtuals is back over $2, or is it 20 cents or $2? I can't remember. Something like $2. Rect is up 80% on the week. Obviously, Ovi had a huge sellout for the second batch of Rect drinks. So there's really just opportunity every which way you look here at the moment. And I guess the bigger question, which we'll come to in a second, is, is this just part of a broader, bigger uptrend, or is it, a scam pump in some way? I know what my thinking is. I think it probably ties into the bigger stuff Legendary is going to talk about in a little bit. Getting into the headlines themselves, we have the US and China deal. US and China have released a joint statement this morning. They said both parties are going to commit to keeping 10% tariffs. Some of the rest will be suspended for an initial period of 90 days or so. Then we've got Bitcoin dominance down from 61 to 64%. We'll be talking about the memes running hard as part of this general conversation of where we are in the market and what is kind of interesting us in terms of allocation. And then finally, BlackRock meets with the SEC to discuss staking and crypto ETFs. They just keeping their hand on the pulse, keeping things moving forward with their plans to, I think, tokenize everything. They've been incredible. CEO Larry Fink is incredibly bullish on tokenization and just wants everything to get tokenized. So I think we'll see that play out. Some notable price action. I mean, everything being up. The only things that I didn't mention, Frog is also up 60% to 108 mil. Sui's up another 5% to $4.20. The rest of the majors seem to just be kind of chilling out here for a second while everything else is running. Ledger, is there anything we need to know on the NFT side?
Yes, absolutely. Let's take a look on the NFT side of things, starting with this CryptoPunk Pigtails sale for 81 ETH and moving into the majors themselves. It's a bit of a mixed view. Pudgies are up on the day, up 3.5%, 11.6 ETH floor, but basically unchanged over the last 7 days, which is pretty good considering the fact that ETH during that time frame is up 40% and people are not selling off their NFTs but are happy to hold them instead. Bored Apes are at a 13 ETH floor, down a couple percent over the last day. Doodles have recovered a bit. However, they are obviously, after the token launched last week, down 62% over the last 7 days. So it seems to be a bit of a mixed picture. The only other collection that I want to point out is DGods. DGods are back at a 0.6 ETH floor, sorry for that, and up 25% on the day. And this is on a statement by Frank that he won't lead the project anymore. He is retiring from his position as CEO of DGods after 3 years and is handing the project over. I see you chuckling along, B.
It's just funny use of the word retiring. I think Brad.
Yeah, what does that even mean? Yeah,
He's retiring. He's He's done it. He's done his work. His
I
life's
will
work.
continue to do what I have been doing the last year and a half, which is nothing.
Well, he said he wants to go back to the gym though.
I mean,
And he's not on
I
the
think
run.
we can sympathize with that.
Everyone can sympathize with that. It's the main thing that we all wanted to do when the bull market is getting too crazy. So we'll keep following along to get any tips on that. Okay, last few bits of news to get you up to speed with the rest of what's going on. Japanese investment firm Metaplanet bought another 1,241 Bitcoin holdings, now worth around 700 mil. Interestingly, on this stable coin bill, Democratic senators have introduced legislation to ban the creation and promotion of crypto by Trump and other government positions. It's kind of the stablecoin bill is kind of getting negotiated a little bit now, and people seem to be putting forward this argument that the president and the team have been profiting off meme coins, which basically they have. Like that is something that has been happening. I don't know what specific entities are the ultimate owners of the meme coins. And actually, I think this was always the criticism around that period of time, right? It's brilliant that there's a pro crypto administration, but it's also very annoying that they kind of jumped on the bandwagon in this way to create this speculative fervor. Now giving maybe the opposition something to poke at, and that is what the Democrats are doing. I think in this case, actually, very rightly, which is, look, man, how much money are you making from this stuff? Are people going to be like, corruption is a real thing, or the potential for corruption is a real thing? It's not straightforward how you're supposed to get the path to the president is not meant to be as straightforward as just buying some meme coins, I don't think. So look, reasonable questions being asked there. I don't know what the conclusion will be. Hopefully it can get separated from the stablecoin stuff though, because the stablecoins are just genuinely, legitimately helpful and going to be helpful for the US, I think. So these two things need to be separated, in my opinion. USDT is now on Hyperliquid. I think that's pretty big news. Tether kind of expanding in that direction. Lido Finance had to do an emergency vote because one of their private keys got leaked. Everything seems to be okay though. That's for ETH staking. Memecoin launchpad Boop ended their airdrop claim, shutting it down because of loopholes in the design. They said the new incentive system will come out in 1 to 2 weeks. Great for, well, not great for anyone who was planning on doing a launch and accessing their huge airdrop, but good for the people who managed to do it, get out just in time, because that incentive system is now dead. As Legendary said, Frank D. Gods announced today it's his last day as CEO of D. Gods. That role is moving on to others. And interestingly, on the ordinal side, Bitcoin puppers are up 35% to 0.05 Bitcoin, and the rest of them are kind of moving as well. So a bit of action on the ordinals side too. That is the Web3 Roundup to get you up to with everything that's happening in the space. Want to hear, before we get into the main headlines today, want to hear what's catching people's attention. Want to go to Funky first though, has his hand raised. Funky, welcome to stage, my man. How are you doing? What's catching your attention? What did you want to contribute?
Yeah, gang. Just 3 real quick things. 1, B-check. Always, always, always keep a moon bag. Always. Don't be surprised that Vader and all these others are running. Always keep a moon bag. 2, no one should ever stop going to the gyms. Bull market, bear market, whatever. Go to the gym. 3, I'm really frustrated about the whole Genius bill thing, but I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later. It's not totally dead yet. So I just wanted to point that out. But yes, the Democrats mounted a surge to kind of stop it from just getting passed all the way through in the Senate, but that was frustrating.
I agree, and I think this was always going to be the issue. Yes, in my opinion, these two things should be separate, but that's not how these things work. If someone wants to fight a fight with you, they're going to drag this thing over here that they find annoying into the legitimate conversation because they then just leverage that as part of the argument. So I think this is probably to be expected, to be honest. So hopefully they can separate that and sort it out. Good stuff. Boys, what's catching your attention though? Legendary. Before we get into the main stuff today, anything interesting you?
The USDT 0, the Tether launch on Hyperliquid, is definitely an interesting one. I had completely missed that, to be honest. The only way that I noticed it is that I just saw a bunch of USDT 0 in my portfolio track, and I was like, where is that coming from? And then I read up on the news, and it's pretty cool. Also, for those not familiar with USDT 0, which is just pain in the ass to pronounce that, it's still Tether. It's not a fork of Tether. It's just the omni-chain compatible layer 0 backed version of Tether, which is there to tap into liquidity across chains and unify those liquidity pools.
Indeed. And one of the reasons why I think this is significant, I've been debating sharing some of these strategies on the timeline, and I think I've kind of concluded that there are some things which are kind of not worth sharing because you get diluted too much. So there's like a couple of things. One thing in particular I'm running, which I share on the show, but I don't share on the timeline because, like, look, if you're listening to this show, I'll tell you, but I'm not putting it in writing and not letting people like bookmark it and go back to it. But the reason that I think USDT on Hyperliquid is good is because there wasn't really a good way to, there wasn't like a really clean way so far to borrow against your collateral with stables or to do things with stables, because the only stablecoin they had was this one by Felix protocol, which is a cool protocol, but it's an over collateralized stablecoin and it's a little bit complex. So for example, I had deposited a bunch of Hyper's collateral. I then borrowed a very small amount of the FEUSD. I intentionally kept the
This
ratio.
is on the EVM side, right?
Yeah, so this is on Hyper EVM. I intentionally kept the rate very, very low because I didn't want to get liquidated. But then because it's an over collateralized position, there's this thing that they run where if the FEUSD loses its peg, there's some incentive where your collateral can get redeemed against. So like I lost some collateral in that redemption process, and it's my fault. I didn't read, so I didn't lose a huge amount. But this is what I mean. It's not like a perfectly, because it's an over collateralized stablecoin and there's other forces at play. There's not like a clean way to just be like, look, here's my hype, give me my stable coins, blah blah blah, like etc. etc. So why I think USDT is interesting is A, because now it's like this clean way to borrow against your hype, and second, there's some really interesting LP opportunities which I would assume most people are not aware of because they're not. This is like 3 steps deeper into hype than other people. On Kitten Swap and on Hyperswap, the only one I've been looking so far is Kitten Swap. You can LP USDE with USDT 0 for like 15%. It's like that's more that's more than anyone would get for like normal stuff. That's like an insane amount. And there's actually interesting pools with like hype and USDT, where if you're bullish on hype, you could like, it's like I'm going to make these numbers up, but the various pools that I was interested in was like hype, USDT, UBTC, so unit Bitcoin, and hype. Like if you like those 2 assets, just throw in the pool. It's like 100% on the 100% APY on the
100 on hype and Bitcoin.
Let me tell you, I sent it to someone in a Telegram. Let me just check. One of them's like hype USDT 0 was 200%, which is insane. I mean, look, it might not last very long, right? Because I'm talking about it now. Hype USDT 0, 246% APR. That was yesterday. Have not got around to doing it yet, so I'm just going to tell you guys so you can front run me first.
I mean, but if you're LPing, you're losing all the upside on this stuff, right?
Well, so
I mean,
this is what I mean. It has
Bitcoin and hype, and you're bullish on both assets, and you think both you're long.
Still, you're losing the upside on both of them, right? You're like, if the pool goes up, you're always going to adjust to the lower of the 2. Yes, you're getting higher APR, but like you're still losing the upside. Like that's the entire reason being an LP sucks.
Yeah, but in that case, you would lose the upside to a significant extent only if one asset is repricing at a stronger rate or at a significantly stronger rate over the other one, right?
No, you always lose the upside, regardless if the assets are bullish or not. You're always capturing the impermanent loss. So that like both can go up, you're still going to maintain a dollar position.
If one pumps significantly higher than the other, right? Because then you were to swap from BTC, say Hype is running a lot and BTC is just moving, just quote unquote moving up 10% and Hype does another 50, then you'll be more in BTC than in Hype. But if both of the assets move like at a similar pace and you have those 200 something percent APY, which I don't think is a sustainable rate, but in that case, you would be,
You get
I
the
think,
lower of the
earning more
two.
yield. Yeah, and you would earn more yield than you lose an impermanent loss.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than having a shitty asset for sure. I still like being an LP in that position. I just don't know that it's like I'd much rather take a directional bet on one of the two, but it's good with the APY.
Yeah, and so for example, like even if say you just wanted to do things clean in stables, to go USDE USDT 0 for 15%, like as you say, it's not a directional bet, so there's kind of no upside in that scenario. But because Hyper EVM I think is very underfarmed, there's like these interesting things that you can do, which I think people will be more confident to do now that there's like a proper stable coin, is my point. Like all of these things become.
I had some people over there like dunking on me because I made a post a while ago about if the Hype EVM is going to turn out to be like the ordinals ecosystem. They're like, oh, bro, Hype EOs are now at 5K. Like it's, like they're everyone's making so much money over here. It's not going to be like the ordinals. And I was like, I just gave him a chart of pups. And I was like, mother effer, like pups were like a quarter of a Bitcoin or like 3/4 of a Bitcoin, whatever the craziness they were. Is like, it's all relative to the main asset. So if Hype continues to run and Hype EOs go from like $1,000 to $5,000, you're still losing the upside to like the actual main asset exposure. And I like, that's my bet, is that you will continue to see that thing run, and the Hypeos, the NFT, the whatever ecosystem may not always capture 100% of it, because all of the actual like utilization is going to be in the Hype core side of things. Like, I'm open to being wrong. I'd like to be wrong because I'm trying to get exposure to that stuff. I just don't know that I'm confident enough to dive deep into that ecosystem.
One shout out to Overwatch in the YouTube comments talking about opportunities. Overwatch is pointing out something I was absolutely not aware of, and I think it's pretty cool. Overwatch says he's been getting paid to borrow CBBTC Euro on base because there's a negative borrow APY due to rewards. So you actually can get more Euro exposure, which is something I like. I mean, now the dollar is getting stronger again because of the China yes deal, which we'll get to in a couple of minutes. But that's also lovely to be paid to borrow and increase your Euro exposure by that. Especially if you look at that. This is where my mind goes with it.
I spent like all weekend basically looking over my portfolio and trying to see how and where I want to position a lot of my shit. I did see a little bit of that. I was in like Definitive Fi, like trying to see if there was just a lot of my money's on base because I got a lot of money from Kaido. So like I was trying to like, okay, I want to position in this area. I think base is going to continue to be like the thing to go to in the EVM Ethereum world. So it's like I want to be arm's reach away from virtuals, away from whatever, just so I can make quick plays if I want to. I ended up doing a lot of stuff in Pendle. Going back to the well there. My Kaido actually is I ended up doing the LPing on Pendle, so I can get like I think it's like 30-40% APY on the Kendall on the Kaido staked Kaido position. So you get the fees from the pool, you get the 30-40% APY just from the rewards. And I found out that they're actually doing some emissions incentives there. It's like 200K Kaido a month, which I guess is basically the yield that I'm selling there. But so now, as we get Kaido distributions over the next few weeks, I think they're doing weekly rewards now. Eventually, like for every 7-day stretch that you have, you get Kaido distributions. I need to see what that actually is, but just so I can kind of diversify my position and capture some locked in returns on the Kaido that I have staked while I get more Kaido from the platform for yapping my ass off. And then I think I'm not going to say it. I have another position I think that's interesting. I think it's a little oversold the last few days. And I'm probably going to enter in over the next like week or so, and then maybe we'll talk about it.
Yes. Okay. So I'll be the only one telling people what to do and let people front run me. Yeah, Brad is going to be.
I'll say it's Boop. I think Boop is oversold.
Interesting. What's the thinking?
It's down to 30 million. 30 million is pretty fucking low for like this.
That's really low. Actually, it was up at 200 a minute ago.
Well,
So it's
sorry,
like,
30, I was looking at market cap. So like right now it's at
okay,
37 mil, 127 FDV.
okay,
It's sold like crazy. It's basically max FUD right now. And if you look
true.
at like, I still think the structure is really good. I still think Dingling is going to be the person that is going to continue to try to run this up and try to encourage people to mint or like our mint or launch tokens through it. I think that they cut off the people that can actually claim their tokens. So there's like 1% left in the pool, or in the pool that was going to go to KOLs. That
Mm.
means 1% minus whatever part that they cut off, like the only people that actually claimed it. So less than 1% of sell pressure is eligible over the next like 2-ish weeks of people that can actually like claim and sell from the KOL side. And with them cutting off rewards, and they're going to use that as a new incentive program, that'll also coincide with like that 1 to 2 week window from now, which is when the rest of the KOLs will get theirs. I looked at it. It's between like 10 and 12 days usually is like what most people will get their unlock, which
Yeah.
means this new incentive program will land at the same time that these people get their unlocks, which means like, and again, the other unlocks are stopped. I don't see it going much lower from here. If you look at the actual rewards,
Mm.
for the launches, I think it was yesterday. I almost woke up in the middle of the night to do it. There were 5 different cults that launched in the last 24-hour period. Like it's all time low, right?
Okay.
So 5 that graduated were splitting 20 grand a pop. Like each
Wow.
one of them got 20 grand to launch. So like I think people are still sleeping on the daily boop drop for that shit. I
Got it.
think that'll eventually wake people back up and they'll start buying into it. And again, there's a lot of flywheels there. I just don't think it's gonna go much lower than 30, 40 mil. I don't have to
I
get to
like
the
the
bottom,
thesis,
but
and I guess, yeah, part of that thinking is they've just got more ammo. They've definitely got more ammo
yeah.
to play with, and they'll be redesigning that. So I think they said 1 to 2 weeks, the new incentive design for at least the airdrop aspect will be out. So we'll keep an eye on that. I think, conscious of time today, we've got to get to the main headline. Want to circle back to like some of these strategies that we're thinking about how to navigate space in the next few weeks or so. But Ledge, we obviously had the very important news. Well, is it news? Is it half news? It's like leading news. There's definitely information that's coming out about the US and China deal. Positive joint statement that was made in the last 24 hours. Do you want to just take us through what happened, what we need to know, and then we can start to think through like the consequences?
Absolutely, let's do it. Yeah. The markets are back above Liberation Day level on the deal that US and China announced. United States and China have agreed to slash the tariffs in a deal that is actually way, way better than most people have expected this deal to be. So the US will cut extra tariffs it imposed on Chinese imports in April this year to 10% plus the 20% fentanyl related tariffs, so to a total of 30% from 145%. And Chinese tariffs on US imports will fall to 10% from 125%. So summing that up, both sides agreed to cut tariffs by 115%. These measures are active for 90 days, and then we'll see after that what will happen. And the Financial Times had reported that the markets very, very much like that news. S&P, Nasdaq futures are up 3 and almost 4% respectively. The dollar is up against the other currencies as well, is up against the euro as well. Gold has moved down significantly. Gold is down 3.5%. Oil on the other side, crude oil barrel is up almost 3% to $65 per barrel. And taking a look at some more individual stocks, tech stocks like the news a lot. Apple is obviously up 7% on pre-market trading. Amazon is up 8%. And Maersk, the shipping company, is up 11% on the day. So in essence, we have a deal that allowed both sides to more than save face and see a rate cut of 115%, which is pretty bullish, not only for equities, not only for the dollar, but has obviously also reflected very, very positively on the crypto market per se as well.
Love it. Excellent summary. Just from your reading of the situation, Ledge, would you say that, okay, we've got this like initial set of good news. To what extent do you think this is a continuing story? How much more do we need to, how much more is there to come from this? Or do you think that in some way it doesn't even matter now, at least for the market, as it's kind of being guided into the direction that we're going?
I think in a similar way how we talk about the meme coin roller coaster, you can also paint a picture of the anxiety roller coaster. And the anxiety was at peak when we had the Liberation Day and when there was 100% uncertainty of what's going to happen. And this uncertainty has been reduced after we've seen the first deal being struck with the UK. Then over the weekend, there were the announcements that a deal or a negotiation with China is moving on quite positively, as Percent had announced as well. And now that we have this deal, and it's again better than most people would have expected it to be, I think even once we run to the end of that 90-day period, and in case there's no sustainable deal made by then, the anxiety of what will happen will still be there, but the anxiety loop will get smaller and smaller and smaller every time. Now, that is not to say that there are not other things that could come in the way of this bull market or of this run. There's still the conflict in Pakistan and India, which heated up and then also seemed like it got a bit calmer as well over the last couple of days. But just from a tariff perspective, I think that the anxiety loops are bound to get smaller over time and not bigger again.
Interesting. Okay. One thing I would just clarify, I can't remember if this was the number that you gave, but Reuters is reporting as part of a summary, it said the US and China, US tariffs on China will fall to 30%.
Yeah,
from 140.
Exactly. It's the 10% base tariff charge and then the 20% fentanyl imposed charge. So that's the 30%. From the Chinese perspective on US imports, it's only 10%. But basically that means that both sides have cut by 115% each, because the US ones have been at 145 and the Chinese ones have been at 125. So both basically have made an equal move. Both are like equal partners that meet at eye level, basically, because both cut by 115%. But because of the fact that the US had higher tariffs, because they had base tariffs plus 20% fentanyl imposed tariffs on top of that, the US total tariff will be 30%, and the Chinese tariff on US imports will be only 10%.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying. So obviously the dollar's gone up here. I know one of the things you were doing was like trying to get a little bit out of the dollar, not specifically because you live in a not dollar denominated country, so it's kind of helpful for you to have a certain amount in your own currency anyway. Gold is a little bit down now. How are you viewing this, like these different basket of assets, and how are you viewing Bitcoin and risk generally? Like, I feel the way this stuff has moved is that it's just this huge barrier that was in the way, and it's just being completely all the barriers just been taken down. And I don't know if sentiment is kind of running away with itself for a little while, but I think coupled with, and I think this is my point, coupled with the Cantor news, like, look, MicroStrategy have been buying Bitcoin all the time anyway. So that buy pressure is just not going. But when I couple it with the Cantor news specifically, it was like Cantor, SoftBank, Tether teaming up to buy the number of Bitcoin that they were trying to buy. Then just hearing stories of like all these other Bitcoin treasuries getting spun up. You're seeing some Solana treasury companies also being spun up. I'm not, I have no specific opinion on doing this with other crypto. I'm mainly focusing on Bitcoin. But when you pair it with that, and then like some of these trade barriers getting taken down, and just like the economy loosening up again or feeling less stress, I just find it very difficult to be very difficult to be bearish now, even though we're at the highs. And for a long period of time we were just trading in a range, right? Just find it very difficult to be bearish now. Like, how are you viewing it?
I very much agree with you. And there was a interesting post by Fejao. I never know how to pronounce the name correctly, but there was an interesting bit in that when it comes to inflation and the Fed. So they've been saying inflation is in a very interesting spot. You have oil that is at a multi-year low. And yes, we said it just a couple of minutes ago, oil is up a bit, but it's still at a relatively low price. And the next 2 months, we'll probably see very soft headline numbers from this oil move. And that will then trickle into other subcomponents too, assuming that we get continued off-ramping of tariffs, which means that we get continued deals like the ones announced with the UK and China, and paired with the CPI in the gutter due to oil. I think this is also clearing the way for meaningful Fed cuts in the summer. So that's an additional point to keep in mind that is perfectly underlining that bullish sentiment of yours, which I'm also sharing. I mean, I said there's still always, something could come in the way of this always. Have escalating conflicts in India and Pakistan. But then again, I don't think
I'm not buying that though anymore.
No, I'm not buying that either, and I don't think this is what's happening. And even if I think this anxiety period clearly showed that BTC did pretty well, and that this chaos hedge theory still worked out. So, from a crypto-centric perspective, very, very excited for the next couple of months, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. I bought a ton more of Bitcoin over the weekend, actually. Didn't really mind that it had gone up a bit, obviously, since it's obviously been on a run. Bought a few of the dips beforehand and just felt like buying a bit more now. As part of that kind of holistic portfolio rebalancing, where every now and again you just don't know what's going on, right? And then you look at the whole thing holistically and like, oh, okay, this is the proportion, irrespective of whether the price is high or low. Like if you're bullish on it and you just see the proportion, you're like, okay, I want to up this proportion in some way. That's how I was thinking about it. Coming to you, Brad, any thoughts on the above, what we were just talking about? Or do you want to talk a little bit about dominance, Bitcoin dominance going from 64 to 61? Do you want to get into the numbers? Memes obviously running hard as a consequence. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, so yeah, we can get into the Bitcoin dominance stuff. I think a lot of people are starting to call for alt season. The other side of that is that, like, hey, if you're calling for that, you're also calling for a little bit of Bitcoin topping. The thing that I heard a lot in podcasts and just in discussions over the last weekend, actually a few days, is like dispersion's coming. Like that's what I was getting at with my post that you had linked. I don't know if you have it on the screen, but like I called a forever top on smart contract platforms. So like if we do believe that Bitcoin dominance is topped and it is now time for things to be a little more fun and for there to be an alt season, we're starting to see numbers pumping across the board. I said, and I talked about this on our call or the podcast later last week, that I'm not convinced it all goes in one or two directions, being like just Solana or just Ethereum, and that those things like go to Valhalla just as Bitcoin is like breaking through all-time highs. And the reason I came to that conclusion is why everything is having success in this space today, right? Like we're seeing all kinds of incredible developments on the stablecoin side, right? We're seeing Stripe come to the market with their stablecoin offering, which means like now they're basically a full service stablecoin that you can buy in it, you can pay in it, you can basically use it as a bank. So like, and as soon as these companies implement stablecoins, and you can see like on their quarterly reports, they're saying, oh, look, we just cut costs by 35% just by switching to stablecoins, because now we don't have to deal with a lot of the actual financial backend. Everyone's going to start diving into that stuff, and the adoption of these things is probably only going to go up to the right. I think there was the Treasury put out a report and said they anticipate stable coins going to like 2 billion or 2 trillion market cap alone by 2028. So like this stuff's getting trillions. And like for reference, the entire market cap right now, the entire industry is under 4 trillion, right? So like that's a huge portion of it going strictly to stablecoins, and it's basically up only on supply right now. But that's not sexy. That's not what we want. That's not like what we always envisioned, is that like our coins would be money and our coins would be the thing that gets this like crazy premium as a valuation. That's what Bitcoin is getting a little bit. Bitcoin gets the store of value, but we were hoping outside of the store of value, which is again what Bitcoin has become the special snowflake for, that the medium of exchange stuff would propel our assets beyond the fee generating aspect of their valuation, right? If you're looking at everything based on just DCF and like the fees they generate relative to their actual valuations, all of this shit is really overpriced, all of it. And the gap between like what the token is worth based on fees and where its valuation is today is based on this like nebulous moneyness premium. Again, store of value, medium of exchange, like it's what all the pools on Solana are denominated in. So you need to hold on to, 500 souls so that you can swap into, whatever meme coin. Boop, if you're listening to me today and I pilled you for whatever reason, right? You need to hold Sol for that reason. You need to hold Ethereum if you're swapping on Uniswap. You need to hold those things, and that's like this moneyness premium, right? It creates a lot of buy pressure. But as stablecoins become popular, as all of these applications in the name of adoption are starting to like abstract away our native assets, right? Everything is denominated in USD. Like if you go on like Moonshot on Solana, like all that looks like USD because that's the friendliest thing for adoption. So like all of the incentives for me point to continuing to erode the moneyness of these smart contract platforms. And by abstracting both the native asset, so you don't have the moneyness, and abstracting the actual chain that you're operating on, abstracting all of it away, like that premium that we were used to look to justify our valuations as basically getting dispersed across 1,000 different chains. You have Hyperliquid, you have Solana, you have Sui, you have all these L2s coming on board. Like you have all these chains, and like there's no reason to hold on to the underlying thing. At least not like you don't perceive it because it's all abstracted away. So my wonder is, in the smart contract bucket of all of these things that are not Bitcoin, does value just get spread very, very thin across a lot of these? I think usage will still concentrate on like a few key chains, but like will the moneyness element continue to erode, and will all of these things basically just chop for a while, going sideways? Like maybe probably not all-time highs again. I think 400 something billion, which is fucking high, really fucking high for anything to be valued at. That was what Ethereum was at. I'm saying, like, if you are a Hyperliquid, if you are even a Solana, if you are a any upcoming chain, MEGETH, right, or Sui, Aptos, I think those things still have plenty of value to the upside, but I don't think any of them, including Ethereum, will ever hit the 450 billion again, and they all like operate within that constraint.
I've got the interesting question that you ask off the back of that, or the counterfactual, which is not one that we're able to answer anymore with certainty. It's like, would ETH be higher in the absence of Hyperliquid? And I think the answer to that would be yes, because maybe there would be products that would have been built, or that activity.
No, you can't replicate Hyperliquid's performance on Ethereum. Like you couldn't even do it. Like Hyperliquid's a non-existent thing, right? And that like Hyperliquid, what it's doing is kind of the same bull case that you had originally for the Ethereum ecosystem with L2s, and like you're not starting to see with Bitcoin and Bitcoin L2s, right? Hyperliquid created a net new experience, and therefore is getting net new fees, activities, users, and like the hope is that you grow the pie by having an offering that is net new, right? Because you couldn't do that on Solana, you couldn't do that on Ethereum, you couldn't do that whatever. So it's like new experience, new money, new capital, new fees, new whatever, right?
And Hyperliquid is still super small though. I mean, I love Hyperliquid,
right?
But
Relatively,
look at the market caps. ETH is at 305 bill. Hyperliquid is at, where is it? At 8 bill. That means it's 2.5% of ETH. It doesn't matter in comparison to ETH.
Right.
It's true.
Ethereum added a Solana over the last 7 days, right? Just like relative, like Ethereum has been getting absolutely clobbered the last 3 years, and you don't realize how big it still is. It's fucking massive. It is still huge compared to like basically everything else that is its peer within the ecosystem, right? So like that value is the decentralization, the moneyness, the whatever, but like that stuff has been eroding a little bit the last few weeks or last few years, because maybe it was overpriced originally, because we all thought everything would concentrate to the ETH token. We're seeing dispersion. It kind of bled out. We're now seeing a little bit of recovery, but
the
450 billion is a lot.
The thing that is meaningfully taking away from ETH, where I would say this argument is valid, to me would be BNB. BNB in itself is at 100 bill market cap or 95 bill market cap. That's a third of ETH. That ecosystem basically, I know it's very much tied to Binance, obviously, but that per se could somehow exist on ETH as well. So I think that is taking away. The other thing, or the other thought that I had on ETH more recently is to do with the crypto reserve bills from New Hampshire, and also from Arizona as well, that they said the minimum market cap for a cryptocurrency to be even considered to this reserve has to be 500 bill, and that is, I think, over 12 months or 9 months, somewhere in that range average. So basically, the only
Gargantuan.
contender that would come close to that, would have a realistic chance, is ETH. Like, ETH is not there yet. It was there. It never was there on a like 12-month average, I think. We never managed to hold the 4K for that long. But that to me would be the question, how institutions like BlackRock and other other big money players are looking at this, if they're like perfectly happy with seeing BTC as the only asset being obviously strongly above that range, and have a lot of leeway to also go down and still be above a 500 bill market cap. BTC is at 2.06 trillion right now. Or if there might be a move to try to push ETH above those 500 billion, just to hold it long enough and to make it eligible to be also considered by strategic Bitcoin reserves, because ultimately it's not only about the strategic Bitcoin reserves, it's about institutional players like pension funds as well, who are extremely conservative too, and who at this stage in the market would not consider ETH to be a big enough asset to be bought.
Yeah, fair points. Interesting debate there. I want to look, we're running out of time for today's show already. I think we ultimately communicated the most important bit of news to you guys. Along with this, memes have been running incredibly aggressively. We spoke through some of those numbers at the top of the show. Moodang's up 100% on the day, like 500% of the week. Rect's up 80% of the week. Left, right, and center. These are just two. I'm not going to go through the whole list again. Everything is green on the risk side. I shared this tweet earlier called "The Toolkit to Make It This Cycle." Just more to encourage. I'm just trying to share my screen, Ledge, or you can find it on yours. It's up to you. More to encourage a discussion of like, how are the ways that we're thinking of being a bit more disciplined and strategic when there's so much stuff going on in the market. It's incredibly hard. I spent a full day looking at my portfolio yesterday, similar to Brad, just like trying to get on top of things, closing certain things and figuring out where everything was. This is what I came up with as a set of ideas for trying to design something moving forward. I said, 1, Bitcoin. Everyone is preparing their Bitcoin treasury companies to buy as much Bitcoin as they can. It would be nice to have some and accumulate that. The way to do that for me is by doing that via unit on Hyperliquid, because I think Hyperliquid would help further incentives moving forward. And I think unit, we've spoken about before, would be a great way to, to buy Bitcoin via unit. That would be the way that I do that. I still think you need a Sol wallet. Like, as much as I've moved towards this Hyperliquid crowd, and no matter where you want to do other stuff, you still need a Solana wallet. I personally don't think you need a trading bot. I know lots of people got obsessed with the trading bots before because they were addicted to the 2-minute ticker, trying to really get an entry point and get out super fast. I actually think it was really expensive. People probably spent a lot of money on those like 0.1 Sol, 0.2 Sol on these trades. And I don't think that's necessary, personally. Again, this is for discussion. I just think one normal Sol wallet using Jupiter, the biggest coins and the biggest runners still will happen on Sol. That's where that activity is baked in. That's where the culture for that type of stuff is. And I still think that represents a huge opportunity. I also think Abstract. So Abstract's been moving certain things the last few weeks. There's a big one over the weekend. I think the shenanigans on memes don't exist there maybe as they do on Sol. Like, you can get in really, really early because things maybe aren't botted in the same way. Like, it's very hard to get in very early on Sol. Whereas if you haven't got some like big infrastructure set up in order to do that. Whereas Abstract, it feels a bit easier, and there's fewer stuff to compete with each other. So I think that's an interesting opportunity for the next few months. And then the other thing is just compounding stables. Like, look, someone replied to this tweet saying, "Oh, you don't need the stables section." I would encourage everyone to have a stables section. My style has never been to just go all in on crypto every single time. Yeah, sure, that's a high risk strategy. But I'm a big believer in, I think one of the reasons I've got to the position where I've got to is because I'm not always going all in. I'm quite good at keeping it. One thing is making it, the other thing is keeping it. So having some type of stable strategy, and for me, It's farming things like Ethereal, farming things like Hyperliquid with stables, and doing some NFT lending on Gondi, for example, which I think is awesome as a way to get like a pretty 10% plus on your stables. So those are the things that I'm thinking. Ledge and Bread would be curious to come around to you for an idea each before we close out the show.
Definitely agree on this list. I think, especially on Solana, what we've also have seen is the pre-sales are back. There was the Mir AI stemming from the Hollow World and our team pre-sale for this virtual human that raised 72,000 SOL. Similarly, TGEs will be back as well if this sustains. So I think that this TGE plus pre-sale season will also spin some early runners as well. And it's just good to have some capital loaded for that. Equally, the point that I resonate strongest with is exactly taking stuff out and taking profits out to stables, because once you manage to take a certain amount of profits and you're just able to farm yield, or even to have enough cash sitting around that you're like, I'm happy to buy this dip in BTC, I'm happy to buy this dip in ETH and hype and whatever. As you said, you get to a point where you can make moves that are significant enough that, quote unquote, just to double up on hype or just a 30% pump on BTC over a longer period of time are very, very amazing for your overall portfolio and to increase your net worth. So I think the larger your profits get, or the larger your overall net worth gets, the more important it is for you to think about this allocation of risk on and risk off capital. And for me, this was one of my biggest learnings this cycle, that because I've been in crypto for almost 10 years, right? And I've never actually taken profits to fiat before, which was kind of holding me back of being comfortable with entering larger bets when I was like, oh, I like this. I would love to put in a significant amount of money in this bet, but because I was risk on all the time, I had a hard time, even if it was just 5 or 10% of my net worth. So that sometimes made it harder for me to trade in a proper way. So this is why I really want to reinforce this stable part, this taking profit part, because for me it was so helpful to just be able to approach the other risks and bets that I take in a way more strategic, calculated, and freed of emotion approach.
I like it. And that's the reason why that's so interesting, is because people always think about buying everything. Like, opportunities up for buying, right? When you think about an opportunity, it's like, well, what do I buy? And I guess part of what you're saying is part of what I said as well, is that the way to like get to the position that you want to get to is by selling sometimes, and by being in a position where buying doesn't make you feel sick or doesn't put you in an uncomfortable position. Like having the backstop once you've got to a certain position, maybe. Again, it depends on where you are, but sometimes that can be helpful, but that obviously depends for each person. Brad, final reflection from you on the same topic. Toolkit. If you had to pick something to put in your toolkit, one or two things for the next few months, what would it be?
I'm not the one to ask because I don't trade a lot. For me, honestly, the toolkit is to curate your following group, right? It's like I have done so absurdly well on just by posting on Twitter, like useful things. I would say my tool belt would be to get engaged in Kaido and a lot of these social campaigns and actually start like building up the toolkit of your like people that are actually doing well in that world and see how you can emulate them and or grow your presence. Like it's ridiculous, right? Between the Kaido airdrop, the Boop airdrop, these weekly, monthly rewards that are coming both from Kaido and from a lot of these campaigns, like all of my degeneracy from this weekend trying to position for stuff, like a good portion of that was just from getting airdrops for like contributing on the timeline in various capacities. Like, so I would say the best way to get exposure to this industry, if you don't like want to continuously work during the day and then like have to offload that shit from your bank and pump it into the ecosystem and then have to deal with stuff, I like getting money in crypto to then spend on more crypto. So like farming these airdrops by being a social contributor. Like that's the toolkit. Like the opportunities are immense. So I've made 6 figures this year just from clicking some buttons and like talking about things meaningfully. It's absurd. So my toolkit would be to revamp what you can do on the social side, because then you get crypto native money to then degen on the other stuff. And you can only learn the lessons like there, right? You have to trade, you have to get fucking clobbered. That's how you learn. That's how you know. And that's how you continue to like develop that stuff. So get money you can fuck around with.
I like it. Covered both sides there. Covered the trading side, covered the social side. And as you say, like the socials thing is just accelerating, if anything. Like as Kaido builds out its flywheel, as it seems to be the case that, you know, these partners are going to keep rewarding either Kaito yappers or Kaito stakers or Kaito NFT holders. More and more, you've also got the X payout system, which seems to be going quite nicely in addition to all of that. So never been more valuable to just try to contribute to the conversation that you find most interesting, which I think is a nice way to close. Yes, we will talk about the market all the time, but also, you know, we're just 3 guys who are having the conversations we want to have every day. And even this in itself has become very profitable for us. So if that is helpful to anyone as a decent example of how to go about, you know, just attacking something, being a part of the conversation that you want to have, hope that's helpful to people as we like gear up for the next leg of the market. So hope that was helpful, guys. Just a reminder, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour live on X Video, YouTube, Apple, and Spotify too. We will, of course, be back with you tomorrow, and we may have a special guest. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.